fellas, I'm going to be going through every up-and-coming card in the UFC, some that are leaked and some that are already announced. I'm going to be picking one fighter from every single one of these up-and-coming cards that needs to win their next fight on this card. Now, they may need to win for whatever reason. It could be because, you know, they've got a lot of hype and they need to keep that hype, or it could just be that they need to win in good fashion to keep MMA fans sane. So I'm going to be going through every up-and-coming card, picking one fighter who, in my opinion, needs to win desperately. And we'll go with the first card, which is this weekend, and it is going to be Cannonier taking on Borralho. Quite a new fight this is. It only got announced like 2 weeks ago. But the fighter I've chosen for this card is Michael Morales. Now, he's going to be taking on Neil Magny. Yeah, Michael Morales, in my opinion, needs to win more than anyone else on this card when he's taking on Neil Magny. And the first reason I think he needs to win is because we can't afford to lose another prospect to Neil Magny. I hope Neil Magny doesn't become the biggest gatekeeper of the welterweight division. He already shut down the prospect of Mike Mallet. So if we see him shut down the prospect of undefeated Michael Morales as well, Neil Magny, I mean, the problem with Neil Magny as well is the dude, he can't get any momentum. He can't seem to get on a winning streak. He's already shown that he's not top 10 worthy. So if we have to see Neil Magny beat another contender, and beat, well, not a contender, but beat another prospect in Michael Morales, I've got no hope for the welterweight division, man. And the second reason is, like I said, he's got a lot of potential. He's undefeated. He's displayed that he's got really good grappling, and he's actually got quite crafty striking as well. And I think he has a lot of potential in the welterweight division. And if he can get past Neil Magny, that's a big win. So he kind of needs to get this win. It'll push him into the rankings. And the third reason why Michael Morales needs to win is he would just be a lot more valuable to the division than Neil Magny. Now, I'm not a massive hater of Neil Magny. I didn't hate him during the Ian Gary build-up. I think he's actually quite a funny guy. I think the fact that he actually was able to shut down the prospect of Mike Mallet was hilarious. But if we're being realistic, at this point in time, Michael Morales will be a lot more valuable to the division than Neil Magny. Neil Magny's only value is being a gatekeeper. He can't make it into the top 10, so his best job is just to shut down every up-and-coming prospect in the division. So for Michael Morales, I think he'd be a lot more valuable to the division having a new, fresh, undefeated prospect over Neil Magny. Nothing against Neil Magny, but I think Michael Morales at this point in time would definitely be a lot more valuable to the division. So the fighter that needs to win on Cannonier versus Borralho, in my opinion, is Michael Morales against Neil Magny. This is his biggest test. This is where we can really see if he's ranked potential, and I'm hoping that he can get it done. So I'm going to go with Michael Morales against Neil Magny. The next card after that is Gilbert Burns versus Sean Brady, and the chosen fighter for this card, I have gone with Gilbert Burns himself. I think Gilbert Burns needs to get this win over Sean Brady over anyone else on this card, and I think this is a really important fight for Gilbert Burns. Now, the first reason I've gone with Gilbert Burns is because this is a do or die for Gilbert Burns. He's at that stage in his career where he kind of needs to get another win. He had that massive run in 2023 where he had 3 fights, but this is one of those times where he needs to get a win. He lost to Bilal Muhammad, lost all 5 rounds. Then he got finished by JDM, and now if he goes and loses to Sean Brady as well, this is kind of a do or die for Gilbert Burns if he wants to keep the hype. Well, not the hype, but if he wants to keep himself as a top contender in the welterweight division. And that brings me on to my next point, that if he loses this, he's no longer a top contender. He's lost to Bilal. He's lost to JDM. If he loses to Sean Brady as well, he's probably going to be ranked at like number 8th. And he's no longer going to be a top contender in the welterweight division, which is crazy because I've always remembered Gilbert Burns as one of the top welterweights. So losing this fight to Sean Brady would be the cherry on top. And it would push him away from that title area, and he would no longer be considered as a top contender in the welterweight division. And the third reason is simply because he's probably going to be in talks of retirement soon if he loses again. Gilbert Burns is 38 years old, and I'm one of these guys that like to judge people based on performances rather than just age. But if he does lose this fight, he's going to be on a 3-fight losing streak, and if he gets finished in this fight, that's 2 of them by way of finish as well. He definitely doesn't have much to offer in the title picture. If he loses this fight, he's probably not going to build himself up to get a title shot, and he's probably only got a handful of fights left in his career, so he's probably going to be in talks of retirement soon if he loses this fight. Obviously, if he wins, he's still a top contender. He's still in the title picture. He's still a big name in the welterweight division. But if he loses, he's probably going to be in talks of retirement. He's not going to be a top contender anymore. So for Burns versus Brady, I think Gilbert Burns kind of needs to win this fight to keep himself as a top contender in the welterweight division. The next card after that, we have UFC 306, one of the most overhyped cards of the year. And it is obviously main evented by Sean O'Malley and Merab, but I don't think either of those guys need to win desperately. And I've actually got 2 fighters for this card. Now, the first fighter I've gone with is Diego Lopez. I think Diego Lopez needs to win against Brian Ortega on this card. Now, the first reason I think Diego Lopez needs to win is because Ortega's already displayed that he's not champ material. We need new faces. Ortega's displayed that he's not champ material. He didn't look too good in that fight with Yair Rodriguez up until he finished him. He got beaten by Max Holloway. He got beaten by Alexander Volkanovski. And I know these are the top guys as well. but he's already displayed that he's not champ material. Like I said, he's not getting past a Volkanovski or a Holloway. He wouldn't get past a Poirier. And it's just kind of useless. If Ortega can beat Diego Lopez, he's just shut down a massive prospect. But it's not like Ortega's now going to have a shit ton of hype to his name. And I feel like, similar to the Michael Morales and Neil Magny situation, Diego Lopez beating Ortega would be much more valuable. Because we need new faces in the featherweight division. We need some new faces at the top. We need to get these new guys up and coming. And I think Diego Lopez will be that perfect new face in the featherweight division. The next reason is because a Lopez title run would be so fun. Diego Lopez going on a title run would bring me back to when Charles Oliveira went on a title run. This would be one of the most exciting title runs in the UFC. A guy that's likable, a guy that's got a ton of hype to his name, and a guy that, more importantly, is one of the most entertaining fighters in the featherweight division. He's flashy, he's well-rounded, he's got good striking, great jiu-jitsu. A Lopez title run would be one of the funnest things ever. Seeing Diego Lopez take on Ilia Topuria or Max Holloway is honestly like a dream fight in the featherweight division. If he is able to get past Brian Ortega. So, for the sake of a Lopez title run, he needs to win this fight. And the third reason is he's a massive prospect and he needs to win to boost his hype. Now, he has lost in the UFC in the Contender Series, obviously. He lost to Movsar Evloev, which was a very, very close fight. He also lost to Yoanderson Brito. And losing to Brian Ortega as well would kind of show us that maybe Diego Lopez isn't top 5 potential right now. And it would kind of shift all the hype away from all the hype away from Diego Lopez. So he kind of needs this win to keep his name as a prospect, to keep himself as hyped as he is. He'd still be an entertaining fighter, but a lot of hype would go from Diego Lopez if he was to lose to Brian Ortega. So I think he needs to beat Ortega. And the second fighter I've chosen for this card is another, I guess, prospect, and it is Raul Rosas Jr. I think Raul Rosas Jr. needs to win on this card as well. Now, the first reason is he still has a lot of hype in the UFC. He's one of the youngest fighters in the UFC right now. I think he still is the youngest fighter. At least he was the youngest fighter in UFC history, which is where all his hype has come from. And he's still having these good performances, but he can't afford to lose again in the UFC. He already kind of got fraud checked when he fought Christian Rodriguez. If he loses again on this card, it's going to shift a lot of the hype away from Raul Rosas Jr. And that will show us that the only hype on Raul Rosas Jr. is purely because of his age and not how good he is as a fighter. So he kind of needs this win to show us that he's still talented and he's still got a lot of potential. And the second reason why Raul Rosas Jr. needs to win is because it shows us if Raul Rosas Jr. is really ranked potential or not. Like I said, Raul Rosas Jr., even after that loss to Christian Rodriguez, he's been having some really good performances recently. So if he loses this fight, it shows us that Raul Rosas Jr. is just another dude who's unranked, but he happens to be young, so he's got a lot of hype. But if he wins this fight, it kind of shows us that Raul Rosas Jr. might be potential to fight ranked fighters, might be ranked opponent, might be ranked potential himself. So there's a lot of questions that are going to be answered in this fight with Raul Rosas Jr. And I overall think he needs to win this fight. He's already lost to Christian Rodriguez. We can't afford to see him lose again. So yeah, I'm going to go with Raul Rosas Jr. and Diego Lopez for UFC 306. Then we've got the card in France between Renato Moicano and Benoit Saint-Denis, and the chosen fighter I've gone for is Renato Moicano himself against Benoit Saint-Denis. I think he needs to get this win over Benoit Saint-Denis. Now, the reason I think Moicano needs to win, first of all, this is by far his biggest opportunity in the UFC. He's on a 3-fight winning streak. He's the more popular he's ever been. He's getting a main event opportunity against a guy that's just fought in a co-main event against Dustin Poirier. This is a big opportunity for Renato Moicano. If he can beat Benoit Saint-Denis, that is going to open up some massive opportunities for Renato Moicano, some massive fights. But again, he needs to win this fight in order to get those opportunities. So this is his biggest opportunity. He needs to make sure he makes the most of it and gets the win. So I think that's the first reason. The second reason is because he has a lot of potential to be a huge star in the lightweight division. He's fun to watch. He's in fun scraps, at least he has been recently. He seems to be improving as a fighter as well. Obviously, he's got really, really good grappling and jiu-jitsu. And if you can go out there and beat Benoit Saint-Denis, who's another, well, I guess another kind of big prospect, or at least was, he has, huge potential to be a big star, and he's a good guy on the mic. He's promotable. He knows how to promote himself. He knows how to generate hype. He's one of the most talked about lightweights in the world. So I think he has a lot of potential to be a huge star in the lightweight division if he can get past Benoit Saint-Denis. And if he loses to another contender, people aren't going to take him seriously. He's already lost to Rafael dos Anjos and he got absolutely murked in that fight. And he got knocked out by Rafael Fiziev. And I think if he loses to another contender in Benoit Saint-Denis, and by the way, these guys that he's losing to aren't top lightweights either. These guys are just about making the ranking. So if he loses to Benoit Saint-Denis as well, it kind of shows us that, okay, maybe Moicano's a fun guy in the lightweight division, but he's never going to become anything serious. He's never going to become a top contender. So I think he needs this win over Benoit Saint-Denis to show us that he's going to be a top contender and he's going to be more of a serious threat in the lightweight division. So that is why I think Raul Rosas Jr. That is why I think Renato Moicano needs to win against Benoit Saint-Denis. The next card we've got is UFC 307, just recently got announced, and it is going to be main evented by Alex Pereira and Khalil Rountree. Now, I think on this card, Alex Pereira needs to beat Khalil Rountree. I think he is the fighter that needs to win on this card, and I think there's multiple reasons why. The first reason is that Rountree isn't a big name. Losing to him would sting massively. From a you got to think of casuals. When there's a casual in the UFC, you know, the guys that only kind of pay attention to the big fights, no casual knows who Khalil Rountree is. No casual would have ever heard of Khalil Rountree. They might have heard of Yuri and they might have heard of Hill, but there's no way they've ever heard of Khalil Rountree. This is all heavily promoted by Alex Pereira's name. Everyone's going to be watching this fight because of Alex Pereira from a casual perspective. The casual are going to be watching this for Alex Pereira. If he loses to Khalil Rountree, who is pretty much, like I said, from a casual perspective, a no name, that's going to sting for Alex Pereira. If he was to lose to anyone, you want it to be to someone like Adesanya, who's already a big name, or at least another big name in the UFC. If he loses to Khalil Rountree, he's pretty much lost to a guy that has no hype or no name value in the light heavyweight division. So he needs this win in the light heavyweight division to keep his, well, not just to keep his hype, but to keep his space as a top. Well, I don't even know what to say. He just needs this win. You can't really afford to, if you're going to lose to someone with a lot of hype or lose to someone with a lot of name value. Don't lose to a guy that no one's really familiar with in the light heavyweight division from a casual perspective. The next reason is he's a huge favourite going into this fight. This is one of the biggest this is one of the fights where most people are going with Pereira. I mean, most people pick Pereira to win his fights anyway, but he is a huge favourite going into this fight. I'm talking like most people. I haven't heard anyone pick Khalil Rountree going into this fight. He's a huge favourite. Everybody's expecting him to win. It's seen as a layup. So if he loses to Khalil Rountree, that's going to be a massive upset. That's going to be like Strickland versus Adesanya levels of upset. Nobody's picking Rountree to win this fight. He needs to win this fight, does Alex Pereira. And he's a huge favourite going into this fight. And the third reason is losing to Rountree diminishes his heavyweight aspirations. Alex Pereira's getting up there in age. He doesn't have many years left in the UFC. If he was to lose to Khalil Rountree, his aspirations of going up to the heavyweight division would be completely over, because his main goal from there would be to win the light heavyweight belt back, which in there is going to have to face another contender, then he's going to have to get a title shot, and then he's probably going to have to go back to defending. So I'm pretty sure if he loses to Khalil Rountree, his aspirations of going up to the heavyweight division are going to be completely over, and we're probably never going to see Pereira in the heavyweight division, unless he was to move up to the division and maybe face a contender and then get a title shot. If he's staying in the light heavyweight division and he wants to get double champ status, then his heavyweight aspirations would be over to losing to Rountree. So that is why I think Alex Pereira needs to win against Khalil Rountree. He can't afford to lose. This would sting a lot in his career. The next card we've got is Royval versus Taira. I don't think it's been officially confirmed by the UFC. It might have been, but this is going to be taking place in the Fight Night main event. Now, the fighter that I've chosen to win on this card is going to be Chris Barnett against Waldo Cortez Acosta. Pretty interesting fight in the heavyweight division, but the reason I think Chris Barnett needs to win more than anyone else in this card, first and foremost, we can't afford to see another interesting fight to lose to Waldo Cortez Acosta. Waldo Cortez Acosta is kind of like a villain in the heavyweight division. He just keeps beating our favourite fighters. Rebellious Despain has a shit ton of hype to his name. Waldo Cortez Acosta shuts down the prospect and beats him. Andrei Arlovski, this legend in the heavyweight division, gets mocked and beaten by Waldo Cortez Acosta. If one of our favourite unranked heavyweights in Chris Barnett also loses to Waldo Cortez Acosta is going to be public enemy number one for the heavyweight division. We can't afford to see this dude lose to Waldo Cortez Acosta of all people, because Waldo Cortez Acosta is an absolute villain in the heavyweight division. The next reason is because he actually has personality unlike most heavyweights. He's not just one of these Sergey Spivaks or Marcin Tiberias, these NPCs in the heavyweight division with no personality. He's dancing, he's got a fun style, he's athletic, he can dance, he's got good walkouts, he's got personality in the heavyweight division. He's a big name in the heavyweight division, he's not even a ranked dude yet, and that's because he's actually displayed personality, and people have generated interest in Chris Barnett. So him losing again would kind of not necessarily take away from his height, but you just don't want to see a guy like this lose. When there's a guy with heavyweight personality, you want to see him progress in the heavyweight division. You want to see him do well. So I think he needs to kind of win because he's got so much personality. And the third reason is this win gets him really close to the rankings. I don't think anyone really expected Chris Barnett to be a ranked opponent. I think everyone just expected him to be a fun guy who's unranked, but beating Waldo Cortez Acosta, who's one of the best unranked heavyweights in the world, actually gets him really close to the rankings. And I think if Chris Barnett can beat Waldo Cortez Acosta, he's only one win away from fighting a ranked opponent. So, unironically, this actually gets him really close to the rankings, and it actually, pushes him really close to the ranking of the heavyweight division. So, I think Chris Barnett needs to get that win over Waldo Cortez Acosta, and I hope he really does get that win over Waldo Cortez Acosta. The next card I've got is Michel Pereira versus Anthony Hernandez. That's a Fight Night main event that has been confirmed. And the chosen fighter that I've chosen to win is Rebellis Despain. Again, another victim of Waldo Cortez Acosta. He's going to be taking on Austin Lane, and I think Rebellis Despain kind of needs to win this fight out of anyone else on this card. The first reason is because if he loses again, he might not even be UFC worthy. He's not got this big MMA career. He had a few flashy finishes in his early MMA career, got called up to the UFC, got a win, then he got demolished by Waldo Cortez Acosta. If he loses again to Austin Lane of all people, this might show us that Rebellis Despain isn't ranked potential, but might not even be UFC potential. So I think he kind of needs to win this fight to show that he's actually able to stay in the UFC and that he's actually UFC worthy. So that's the first reason why I think Rebellis Despain needs to win. The next reason is because all his hype will go if he loses. Listen, most of this dude's hype went after he lost to Waldo Cortez Acosta. His grappling got exposed, his stamina got exposed, and his kind of whole game plan of finishes his opponent in super fast fashion kind of went after he lost to Waldo Cortez Acosta. He needs his hype to stay. He needs to rebuild his hype, but if he loses again to Austin Lane, his hype is going to be gone, okay? And the third reason is, this is seen as an easy layup. Austin Lane is pretty much the easiest fight you could give right now to Rebellis Despain. This is an easy layup for Rebellis Despain. We couldn't have given this dude an easy matchup. So if he somehow finds a way to lose to Austin Lane of all people, dude, it's over for Rebellis Despain. Maybe we give him another fat heavyweight after this, but it's pretty much over for him, at least in terms of hype. He kind of got fraud checked already against Waldo Cortez Acosta, so to lose to Austin Lane on top of that would be a massive loss to Rebellis Despain. So for Pereira versus Hernandez, I think Rebellis Despain needs to get this win over Austin Lane, because if he loses, that's it for him, man. Then we've got UFC 308, one of the most stacked cards this year, headlined by Holloway versus Topuria. Now, I've actually gone with two fighters on this card. The first fighter I've gone for is Khamzat Chimaev. I think Chimaev needs to win against Robert Whittaker. Now, the first reason I think Chimaev needs to beat Whittaker is because he's already lost most of his hype without even losing. He's already lost most of his hype. His performances have happened to get worse. He didn't look amazing against Gilbert Burns. He didn't look amazing against Kamaru Usman. And he's just been pulling out of fights left, right, and centre. All of his hype, well, not all of it, but most of his hype has already gone in the UFC, and he's not even lost a fight yet. If he was to go and lose, get rid of that undefeated streak, lose a fight in the UFC to Robert Whittaker, that would just put the nail in the coffin. And most of Chimaev's hype would have gone completely out of the drain. So losing is not really an option for Chimaev. He needs to get a win, and he needs to keep this winning streak going if he wants to keep any of the hype that he's got in the UFC. The next reason is because the aura of Chimaev would go and he'd be treated as just another contender. Khamzat Chimaev has always been one of the most hyped dudes in the UFC. He's one of the biggest stars in the sport, and he's not even got a #1 contender fight yet. So the aura of Chimaev, all this hype to Chimaev's name, the aura of Khamzat Chimaev, this dude that just goes out there and mauls people and kills people. If he loses to Robert Whittaker, with all the previous points that I've just said, he would no longer be treated as this massive star. He would just be treated as another contender. I wouldn't put Cannonier, I wouldn't put Khamzat Chimaev above a guy like Imavov, or above a guy like Cannonier, or above a guy like maybe even Paulo Costa. He'd just be treated as another contender in the middleweight division, just another guy who happened to have hype and he got fraud checked. So he kind of needs this win to keep all that hype. And the third reason is triple champ potential to can't even fight for a belt. I remember there was a time when people were hyping up Chimaev as if he was going to be triple champ potential. He was going to win 3 belts in the UFC. So to go from being triple champ potential to not even being able to fight for a belt would be a crazy fall in hype. So I think Chimaev needs to get this win over Robert Whittaker. Not because Whittaker's an easy opponent or anything like that. Whittaker's a tough guy for Chimaev, but he needs to get this win in order to save his own UFC career. So I'm going to go with Chimaev for UFC 308. And I've also gone with Ciryl Gane. I think Ciryl Gane needs to win against Alexander Volkov again in order to save his UFC career. The first reason he needs to beat Alexander Volkov is because people kind of forgot about Ciryl Gane. This dude once had a lot of hype. He was meant to be the next big thing in the heavyweight division. And in these past couple of years, people have kind of forgot about Ciryl Gane. He's been inactive. He's not been winning fights consistently. He needs a big statement-making win to get everybody talking about Ciryl Gane again. But getting a big winner for Alexander Volkov would do that. But losing to Alexander Volkov, dude, he's going to fall into irrelevancy. The next reason I've gone is for Ciryl Gane is because losing to another heavyweight would lose all hope for a title run. There are some people in this world that still think Ciryl Gane has potential to be a champion. They look at this guy as the new breed of the heavyweight division. He already got dominated by Francis Ngannou. Well, he didn't get dominated by Ngannou, but he kind of got exposed in the grappling department by Francis Ngannou. Then he got quickly finished by John Jones in an embarrassing title performance. If he then loses to Alexander Volkov, who isn't one of these massive megastars in the heavyweight division, everyone would lose hype in a title run for Ciryl Gane. Because let's be honest, I think most people would already pick a guy like Gelton Almeida or Tom Aspinall to beat Ciryl Gane. If he loses to a fairly favourable matchup in Alexander Volkov, all hope in a title run has gone for Ciryl Gane, and nobody's going to be taking this dude as a serious contender anymore. I don't even think he takes himself seriously. The dude's shooting movies and rejecting title offers. So, yeah, losing to another heavyweight would lose all hope for a title run. And the third reason, this dude fights once a year. He genuinely fights on average like once a year now. He's completely ruining his career by fighting like once a year. If he loses again, all the interest would be shifted onto other fighters. Why would anyone be interested in Ciryl Gane? He fights once a year. He loses more than he wins recently. He's not a serious contender. He doesn't take himself seriously. If he wants to be seen as a serious contender in the heavyweight division, he needs to win this fight over Alexander Volkov. So I'm going to go with Ciryl Gane for 308. He needs to win this fight, in my opinion. And then for Namajunas versus Blanchfield, a fight that has recently been announced, I think the fighter that needs to win on this card is in the co-main event, and it is Derek Lewis against Alexander Romanov. I think Lewis needs to win against Romanov. Now, the first reason, we can't afford to see another Romanov slugfest. I think everyone would pick a Derek Lewis win over Alexander Romanov. He's not a serious contender. He's not even top 10 potentially. Got finished by Volkov, beaten by Pereira, beaten by, what's his name recently, against Gelton Almeida as well. So, yeah, we just can't afford to see another Romanov slugfest, him holding down Derek Lewis for 5 rounds straight, because that has potential to be even more boring than Almeida versus Lewis, and that is saying something. So he needs to get rid of that Romanov slugfest, which is inevitable. The second reason is another win gives him some momentum. Listen, Derek Lewis has not actually looked that bad recently. He's been getting wins, obviously. Beat Marcos Rogero de Lima in great fashion. Beat Rodrigo Nascimento in great fashion. If he can beat Alexander Romanov as well, it starts giving Lewis some momentum, and maybe we can see him versus somebody like Rosenstrike or, I don't know, some other, you know, top 10 ranked heavyweight, but it gives him some momentum. It gives him a top 10 fight, and it's actually a big win for Derek Lewis if he can get a win over Romanov. And the third reason, it would just be funny to see Derek Lewis's like flatline another heavyweight. I'm very comfortable and I'm very accepting of Derek Lewis being this guy in the heavyweight division that is kind of like the fat heavyweight killer. People like to talk about Rebellis Despain being the dude that kills fat heavyweights. Derek Lewis is that dude. He's just flatlining fat heavyweights left, right, and center. It will be pretty funny to see Derek Lewis in a co-main event go out there and knock out Alexander Romanov and kind of be seen as the fat heavyweight killer in the heavyweight division. I'm very comfortable with that being the role of Derek Lewis. But that is my list of one fight that needs to win on every up-and-coming card. Let me know if you'd have picked any other fighters to meet, or if you agree with this list or whatever. But yeah, thank you for watching.